We tested the KIPON BavEyes 1.25x expander paired with the Alexa 35 in open gate mode and a vintage Angeniéux zoom lens. The Angeniéux Zoom Type 6x20L2 from 1973, which has a focal range of 20 to 120 mm and a constant t2.9. This lens, like many other vintage lenses from that time, are made for the legacy Academy 35mm format, which is smaller than the Super 35mm format, as you can see in this graphical comparison. We need to expand the image circle to fully cover the contemporary Super 35mm format. Expanders with typical magnification factors of 1.4 times or 1.6 times would enlarge the image circle of the lens too much, resulting in unnecessary light loss as well as loss of the angle of view. The KIPON BavEyes 1.25x expander is specifically made for this scenario and enlarges the image circle of Academy 35 lenses only as much as needed to fully cover Super 35 and therefore minimizing the loss of light, which is physically inherent when enlarging image circles. The magnification of 1.25 times also provides maximum preservation of the original angle of view of the lens. First, we are going to test the coverage of the lenses with and without the expander using one of the largest Super 35mm sensors available, the Alexa 35 in open gate mode, which has dimensions of 27.99 by 19.22 mm, which results in an aspect ratio of 1.46 by 1 and a diagonal of 33.95 mm. The corresponding resolution is 4608 by 3164 pixels. We shot all footage at 800 ISO, 24 frames per second, and 5600 Kelvin with no tint correction. Here you see the test chart, which is always exposed for 18% middle gray. Exposure changes caused by the expander or the change of the t-stop were compensated for by changing only the shutter speed, so that the ISO stays consistent and therefore the signal-to-noise ratio. In this first image, we see the Angeniéux 6x20 without the expander at 20mm focal length wide open at t2.9. You can clearly see the barrel of the lens resulting in unexposed areas of the sensor, due to the lens not covering the Super 35-sized format. In the second image, we see the lens at the same settings, this time with the KIPON expander. As you can see, no barrel or vignetting is visible anymore. The full open gate sensor is covered. There is a loss of light due to the laws of physics of roughly 2/3 of a stop. This is compensated for by raising the shutter angle from 45 to 80 degrees, leaving the exposure at 18% middle gray. Next, we stop down to T5.6. Here you see the coverage without the expander. And here you see it with the expander. Now we compare the lens coverage, wide open, zoomed all the way in to 120 millimeters. You see very strong vignetting without the expander, which disappears using the expander. Now we stop down to T5.6 and still you see strong vignetting without the expander, which again disappears using the expander. The last thing we test in terms of sensor coverage is the focal length of 35mm, where the lens image circle is smallest within the whole focal range. Here you see the coverage wide open at T2.9, and here you see it stopped down to T5.6. In the second part of our test, we compared the lens's performance and characteristics with and without the expander. The difference is very, very subtle, and we need to look at the image with a 5x magnification to really point out what's changing. As we see in this first image without expander, shot wide open, the lens is very soft, with blooming and chromatic aberration, which all mostly disappears when we stop down to T5.6. But let's get back to the shot wide open and see how it changes with the expander. As we can see, the softness, bloom, and CA all slightly increase. There's only a very small change in color temperature and tint, which I corrected in the area raw data by -100 Kelvin and -0.40 tint. This is in my opinion almost neglectable, but please decide yourself how much of a difference it makes. On the left side, you see the shot without the expander. On the right side on the top, you see the shot with expander and without correction. On the right side on the bottom, you see the shot with the expander and with correction applied. When we look at the shot stopped down to T5.6, which was sharper and with less CA, and compare it with the shot with the expander, we see that sharpness seems to even increase, and CA and blooming decreases. This is very interesting as the expander seems to emphasize the characteristic of the lens at a given aperture. If it's soft, it gets a bit softer. If it's sharp, it gets a bit sharper. Next, you see the differences on the edge of the frame. First wide open, then again stop down to T5.6. In conclusion, the KIPON 1.25x expander is the perfect tool when using Academy 35mm zoom lenses, like the Angeniéux ones, Cooks, or even Lomos, on modern Super 35mm cameras, like the Alexa 35 or any other manufacturer's camera with a PL mount. The expander is optimized for that task by minimizing light loss and preserving field of view, and comes with a neglectable and easily corrected shift to a warmer image. Thanks to KIPON for providing me with a BavEyes expander, and to 7-Eleven Rent Hamburg for providing me with the space and gear for our tests. We also did some creative testing in the field, shooting a little short film which you can watch here. Thanks for watching.